Hello, everyone, and welcome to another edition of Dr. Khan Insights. My name is Shoaib, and I'll be hosting this session today. This session is brought to you in collaboration with the Hindsights Company, which is a corporate development firm with some spectacular names on their roster. You should check them out on their website. It's thehindsights.com, or you can use all of their social media handles. Well, I'd like to begin by thanking Dr. Khan for giving us the platform today to host this. If you're not familiar with Dr. Khan, it's a network of co-working spaces with 3 locations in Lahore. The idea behind Dr. Khan is to deliver, ideal workspace for businesses and innovators, so they can focus entirely on changing the world without any hassle or worry about their infrastructures. Businesses are beginning to come back this post-COVID scenario, and Dr. Khan's main focus is on providing a safe working environment for your team to come back with all the possible measures and protocols in place. The flexibility that Dr. Khan offers, it allows businesses to manage their costs as they slowly phase their teams into the workplace and pick up pace as the situation improves. So get in touch with these guys, give them a call, and I'm sure they can take care of the rest. Today is a very interesting day. I've got here somebody who's well respected in Lahore, not just Lahore, Pakistan, and more importantly, during these COVID days, he's the torchbearer of the entire health industry in Pakistan. I've here with me Dr. Omar Chughtai. He's the man behind Chughtai Labs. Thank you for joining us today, Omar.
Assalamu alaikum. Thank you for having me.
Well, walaikum assalam, and thank you for being here, Omar. Before we get into our conversation, let me just really quickly update our audience today about a little bit about Chughtai Labs. Well, for those who are not aware, and I don't think there's a single person in Pakistan today who's not aware of Chughtai Labs, you guys have been the backbone in helping Pakistan navigate through this pandemic. Hats off to your team, Omar. You guys are on the front line of this pandemic, working day and night, and we are in absolute gratitude for the work that you've done today. It's an honor to have you here today. A bit about your background, and then we can start our conversations. For those of you who have not been, who are not really aware of Dr. Omar Chughtai, Omar is a graduate from King Edward Medical College. He moved to US, did his residency from the US Anatomic and Clinical Pathology at the University of Texas. And he's an American board certified doctor and a fellow of the College of American Pathologists. Omar, you came back to Pakistan in the year 2007. I wanted to start my conversation today going back some 13, 14 years and starting our conversation from where you came back to Pakistan and you decided it's time for you to set something up. There was a platform you already had, but talk to us a bit about your journey beginning there. And most of the conversations that we have had so far for our audience, we've all seen different calls. Those have been primarily about COVID-19, what Chughtai Lab has done during the pandemic. So we thought today we'll bring you the man himself. Omar, please share with us, when you came back to Pakistan, what was your first thought, day one, Chughtai Labs?
Well, thank you so much, first of all. No one does anything worthwhile alone. Whatever we have done in the COVID crisis, we have not done it in a vacuum, and we have not done it alone. There's been a whole team at Chughtai Lab that's been working 24/7 to make it all happen and to serve patients nationwide. And I could not be more proud of our team and the way that they've responded to this crisis. If you want to talk about me in particular, so I left Pakistan to come back. I left Pakistan in 2000, right after I finished med school. I went to med school because I wanted to work with my father. My father is a pathologist. He started this lab in 1983. I was not even 8 years old at the time. So this lab has been a part of my life, essentially my whole life. And growing up, this lab took up a lot of my father's time. And we spent a lot of time in the lab also just waiting for him and watching him work. And I always wanted to work with him. I was telling somebody a few days ago that if my father had been a surgeon, I would have been a surgeon. If my father had been a plumber, I would have been a plumber. So I just wanted to work with him. And so I went to med school, finished med school, and then he said, if you want to be a pathologist, you have to be a better pathologist than me. Only then can you work with me. You have to be better qualified than me. So, uh, he had some opportunities in the past to go overseas, but he had stayed in Pakistan to work in Pakistan and to do his post graduation in Pakistan. So he kind of pushed me to go overseas and go to the US and get my specialized education. So it was a kind of burnt boat situation. 27th या 28th May को final year का result आया था, and 1st June को Omar Chughtai was in Houston with his bags packed and trying to figure out what to do next. And 7 years later, I was done with my residency and fellowship, and it could not have come fast enough. That date, when my fellowship ended, could not have come fast enough. Actually, it was 13 years and 3 days ago that I moved back to Pakistan, and so it was perhaps one of the happiest days of my life when I finally was able to join Chughtai Lab officially, because even in the interim, whenever there was time off, I would come back. I'd spend, you would get 2 weeks off during the year, and I would come back and spend 10 days in the lab, just looking, seeing what's happening, what new things are happening. So it was just something I wanted to do my whole life. And so I am continuing to live my dream. And that started 13 years ago, 13 years and 3 days ago. And so it was a great day. And having worked in the US and coming back to Pakistan, it was a huge adjustment, of course. There's a different level of professionalism, a different level of expectation that people have from healthcare professionals, people have of each other. And there's a different work ethic. And so it took a lot of time to understand the differences, accept what needed to be accepted, and change what absolutely had to be changed. But God has been kind. It's been a fantastic 13 years.
Omar, this is just phenomenal. I mean, the way your eyes lit up when you talk about your father, and for all of us, especially for me, I mean, growing up in Lahore, we've seen Chughtai Lab grow really, really big. And Dr. Suhail Chughtai is a legend when it comes to the medical sciences in Pakistan. Omar, how was your childhood? I mean, talk to us a bit about, I mean, I know he's your hero, he's your inspiration, but talk to us about how much time did you actually get to spend with him? How much was he there for you? I mean, what kind of a father was he?
I mean, within the confines of a father who's trying to deliver a better life for his children than he has had himself, he is an excellent father. He still is. We didn't get to see him much during the week. We spent a lot of time with him on Fridays. Remember, Chutti Friday ko hoti thi. So we used to spend a lot of time with him on Fridays. We used to go with him to the lab on Fridays because the lab never stopped working. And so I remember countless Friday afternoons when we went to the lab and then we went for the namaz together. So good times. Then there are, of course, times, there's a photograph somewhere of a 10, 12-year-old Omar Chughtai who fell asleep on the floor with a board of Monopoly set, waiting for his father, and he fell asleep on the floor waiting. And so that also used to happen. So I never saw him come home before 1 or 2 a.m. in my childhood. He was working, and he woke up in the morning and went right back to work. So whatever you see today is built on a very deep foundation of just work ethic and of keeping our patients at the center of our universe. And so it took a long time. And I understand, Jeff Bezos said that all overnight success stories are at least 10 years long. Well, this story is about 40 years long now. And a lot of people are new to our story. A lot of people didn't know us before, particularly in the smaller cities. We started in Karachi, for instance, in 2015. And before that, not a lot of people in Karachi knew us. But I think in time, people find out and people think, okay, so these guys are doing good work and hopefully develop good impressions of us. But it doesn't happen by itself. It doesn't happen easily. And it certainly didn't happen overnight.
Well, it never really happens overnight, Omar. I mean, and so
Yeah.
rightly you've said. I mean, it never really does happen. Omar, before we get into the business side of things, and for the audience, we'll try to keep this in three sections today. So the way we've decided with Dr. Omar Chughtai is that we're going to discuss a bit about his business side of Chughtai Labs. We're going to talk a bit about his family, and we're going to talk a bit about Omar's personal life. Omar, if you could just share a little bit of more information on your siblings. We're all aware of Dr. Mariam Chughtai and Ali Chughtai being legends or legends to be in their own right. How was your relationship with your siblings while you were growing up?
Uh,
I see
so
there's
you'd
a
have,
picture of you and Dr. Mariam right behind you.
yes,
So what kind of a
yes.
relationship do you have with your siblings, and how do you
I
all,
have
when you're
a
sitting at a dinner table, what kind of a conversation is that? Because I can imagine, I mean, the gene pool on that table with the kind of intellect, enlighten us with the kind of conversations you guys have.
well. I have. We all have a fantastic relationship, and uh, uh, we have a very busy WhatsApp group with just the four of us. There's four of us. I'm the eldest. Ali is the youngest. So there's two brothers, and then there's two sisters in between. Mariam is the older sister, and then Reem is the
Mhm.
younger sister. Reem is settled in the U.S. with kids, but she also has a degree in journalism from the University of Houston, and so and she's a mother to three, and so she's busier than all of us. And
Okay.
then Mariam, as you know, is a PhD in education policy from Harvard, so she's the smart one in the group, and and she's at LUMS, and she is involved with so many other initiatives that make us all very proud. And Ali, uh, for a long time, was the baby brother. He's 12 years younger than I am, but sometimes I have to remind him that I still see a child when I see him. But of course, he's a fully grown person, very mature for his age even. And he's a lawyer. He did law school in Boston, then he passed the New York bar, and whoa, Ali and Mariam returned to Pakistan, I think 2 months apart, about 3 or 4 years ago. And so I think they also have uh, that same desire to either work directly with dad or at least be around our parents and do something for this country that we all owe so much to.
Mhm.
So so dinner table conversation is about ideas, about uh, well, mostly it's about ideas.
Okay. All right. And is this moving in towards your next generation as well? We'd love to know more about your family now. I mean, we know you're married, you've got a son, you've got a
Yes,
daughter. So talk to us a bit
yes.
about your family.
I've been married uh, 11 years now, and so Sarah is wonderful. She puts up with my intense schedule and my obsession with communicating with my team and communicating with patients 24/7. Uh, and then so she's very patient with me. We have two children, Sadia, who's the light of my life, and Harun, who's younger, who's absolutely spoiled. So 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 Allah ka shukar hai.
All right. Very nice, Umar. Thank you so much for sharing those things that we've not really seen or heard about in some of your other conversations. Umar, your father is a legend in all rights in Pakistan, and he developed Chughtai Labs 1983, as you have just mentioned. What was the vision back then? And I remember we were having a conversation some weeks ago, and you said that where you said that on day one of this pandemic, he said that we have to be up in there, we have to be up there ready, because these are the moments when we have to stand tall. What has he been working on? How did he come about this vision? And where is Chughtai Labs today? Share a bit about your journey, where it was, and how you guys are handling Corona situation or as it is today.
So I think there's two components to it. The first is any entrepreneur when they start out, if they start out to make money, you're already on the wrong track. But if you start out to solve a problem, to fill a need,
Mm-hmm.
then you're onto something. And so his mission has always been to fill that need. There's a huge lack of patient centric care in our community. Patients
Mm-hmm.
go from doctor to doctor, uh, you know customer service is not top of our priorities in many organizations. And
True.
I know for a fact that he would have come home sometimes and then go back. A urgent case that needs to be reported overnight, so he'd go back when he was the only pathologist in the lab. And so, and I'll tell you a story. I'd moved back. This is 2007. 2 months after I'd moved back. So in the US, you have an appointment system. You have a much more educated patient base. So you have an appointment system. So there's a procedure called an FNA, a fine needle aspiration cytology. The pathologist does that. So I would see that patients would walk in at 1 p.m., 4 p.m., 11 a.m. And so they would walk in without appointments, and dad would interrupt whatever he was doing. This is 2007, and he would do the procedure. And I said, what, why don't we have an FNA clinic, time between 8 a.m. and 2 p.m., 2 days a week? And he said, you can't do that. You have to run your schedule based on your patient's schedule. Their schedule, their needs have to be the priority, not yours. And I think that attitude really permeates throughout the organization. We fall short many times, but it's not for lack of trying. Customer care, we have a head of customer experience who's empowered to change anything on the fly as needed for any individual patient across the country. And so and she does. And so that's been, I think, one of the key factors in differentiating us. And then when COVID hit, again, we have a fully grown department of virology, just with a full professor with 2 residents at the time. And
Omar, we'll come to the COVID thing. I mean, that's a whole chapter in itself. Sticking on to the same concept of learning more about you. What's your role at Chughtai Labs, Omar? I mean, what exactly does your day look like? What do you do, man?
So I have 2 jobs at Chughtai Lab. One is the administrative side, which is setting strategy, in line with the vision of the long-term outlook that we are all looking for, and making some decisions. And it's really not a lot of detailed administrative work. And then I have the technical side. I'm also the lab director, so I'm responsible for the quality and the performance of all the lab testing. So we have 5 full departments of pathology, various specialties of pathology, and then we have 7 regional labs across the country. So a lot of my time is spent with the technical team, making sure that whatever results we are putting out there in the world are accurate, are on time, and they meet our quality standards. So both of those things run in parallel.
So Omar, I've had the pleasure or the honor actually to walk in to a few of your clinics with you. And the respect that I see people give you, it's not just because you own that organization or you're a director there. I mean, I see people just smiling while you're walking, and that's the kind of love I'd want to see in my organization, or that's something which is very rare these days. With all of that in place, Omar, COVID-19 hit, and everybody's wondering in Pakistan what's the one thing that you should do. You were probably somebody who was up 24/7, and I can vouch for that on a personal level as well. How do you hold up, man? I mean, how do you keep it inside? This has got to take a toll on Dr. Omar Chughtai. There were patients all around you. You were in a high viral environment. How were you holding up?
I think in any such situation, 2 or 3 things are important. One, you have to have some secure basis, and for me that was my family, of course, and then my deep-rooted conviction that this is what this organization was built for. This is the moment that it's not an accident that we have a nationwide presence, and we have a department of virology, and we are capable of helping. And if we can be a part of the solution, we have to be a part of the solution. So there was never any shying away from the responsibility. So if you own the responsibility, I think that comes with its own adrenaline. Of course, there were many moments of stress. There were many moments of sadness. and despair. Uh, but I think you channel that into actionable things, whether that's taking care of your own family, whether that's taking care of your own people, uh, whether that's updating policies and updating guidance to your team based on the latest available information, knowledge. Because you can't, you in a pandemic at least, uh, in this situation, there was no way that I could lead this team while sitting at home. That's just not going to happen. You can't ask people to leave their families at home and come to work on the front lines, and not do the same yourself. So you have to be in the lab, you have to be in the patient sampling area, you have to make sure that SOPs are being followed, you have to make sure that training is being done, and you have to be in the trenches with your people. Because if you're not doing that, then you cannot be authentic. And uh, and then I think uh, having a conviction in the mission, having a conviction that this too shall pass. It'll take its time. It'll be very difficult, but we're all in the same boat, and so you can
Omar,
deal with
I
anything
can,
if you.
I can hear the passion. I can hear the warmth in your voice. I'm just wondering, when you used to go home every night, and now, I mean, as the danger goes up, the fear is coming down. People are now becoming more slacky in their approach to how they are, handling Corona or COVID-19 these days. But when you used, or when you still go home every day, Omar, I mean, you're going back to a family. What's on your mind when you're getting off out of your car
well
and
for
walking into your house?
well for the first couple of weeks, I was going home very, very late, after kids had fallen asleep, and I was leaving home very early before they woke up, because I was on purpose trying to not interact with them and see them only on FaceTime and stuff. But that definitely is not a sustainable solution. So you have to come to terms with the risk. And I thought about moving into a hotel. I thought about moving into a separate room in the house. But uh, and then of course there were moments of deep despair. I think early on, I think it was the end of March. Sarah had sent a video in our family WhatsApp group. It was just her and the kids, and they were laughing and playing. And you think for a moment, what happens if I'm not in this picture? What if I'm not going to be in this picture in the long term? What happens then? Are they still going to be laughing and playing? And you hope so. You hope in the long term they are, but they're all going to go through a lot of trauma before that, and so you cannot keep those thoughts away. So you have to. I mean,
Okay.
I
Thank
think
you
a
for sharing
journal
that, Omar.
helped. I think a
Well,
journal
thank you for
helped.
sharing that. I understand
Yeah,
it's a tough question to ask, and
yeah,
my apologies for putting you on the spot. But we just thought
no,
we'd want to get behind the man. Omar, moving the conversation a bit forward on this. One
sure,
part of the conversation is Chughtai Labs. One part of the conversation is Dr. Omar Chughtai. But one part of the conversation that I really want to highlight and update our audience is entrepreneur Omar Chughtai as well, and the business that you have set up with your father, of course. And Omar, should entrepreneurs today be worried about a pandemic-like situation ever coming back again? And should they set up their businesses to, somehow be prepared or be ready for such a situation? As an entrepreneur, what are some of the key things that you thought in the early days of COVID-19 of how the organization will stay strong?
I think an entrepreneur is somebody who is going to roll with the punches and look for rays of sunlight even in the darkest hours. And if you don't find any sunlight, then light a match, because there is need for light. And uh, and so that's what needed to be done, and that's what has been done, not just by us. But if you look at the world around us, if you look at what's happening with the initiatives to develop a vaccine, or for that matter before that, if you look at the huge amount of effort that nobody noticed, but that effort was still there to develop these tests to be able to test people for COVID. It's all been done by entrepreneurship, or it's all been done by people who woke up in the morning and said, this is a problem and it needs a solution, and I can find the solution. And many people tried, many people failed, some succeeded, and some succeeded big. People constantly talk about where the tests are coming from, how much the tests cost, and everything. And a lot of effort went into making these tests possible. I mean, the timeline of COVID in our lifetimes, our awareness of COVID extends back to January and or end of December of this last year. And already we have not only developed tests for it, we have developed some treatments for it. And now, yesterday there was news that phase 1 trials for Moderna's vaccine have been successful, or phase 2 trials have been successful, and now they're going to do a 30,000 person trial. So medicine is working and in overdrive, and it's all being driven by a spirit of entrepreneurship. And so whatever your field is, whatever your line of work is, you cannot expect a smooth ride throughout. You're setting yourself up for failure if you insist or on a ride with no bumps, with if a smooth sailing, because in those rough tides are also opportunities, and you just have to have that right mindset. When this COVID hit, we had capacity to do 200 COVID PCR tests a month in March. Mm-hmm. Since this morning, we have done 2,000 tests today. And, I've written it in my notes somewhere. There was supply chain issues. There were, team building issues. The 2 days into our testing effort, our technical supervisor for virology, the department that does the testing, quit on 1 day's notice because he found a job in the UAE to do exactly the same thing. So wow. You have to have a deep bench of people to be able to take over in the middle of a crisis. And we did. And we developed many more people. On day 1, we had no home sampling team to go and collect samples for home for COVID, because COVID requires a whole other set of SOPs and precautions. But we developed a team. So in every problem, in every situation, there are opportunities. In every crisis, there are opportunities. But you have to have the right mindset, and I think the mindset has to be that you have to be a part of the solution. If you are trying to solve a problem, you can get very far. And
wow, inspirational words, Omar. This is something that a lot of our audience today would learn from. And personally, I know, every time I meet you, and not just because we meet socially as well, but I would love to spend more time, and I always have a lot of takeaways when I leave your presence. Omar, the entrepreneurial side of Chughtai Labs now. We need to talk a bit about how Corona has kind of fast-paced or accelerated your growth in itself. And now we do know that there, with travel restrictions that are going to be taken away in some time, how do you envision where Chughtai Lab will be in, I would not say 5 years, in 6 months or 3 months, because this is a completely fluid situation. And how are you kind of, are you putting in a R&D team, which is entirely looking at the business expansion side, because you have a lot of demand right now? And then, we can come and talk about Corona or COVID test kits and testing numbers and what the positivity rate in Pakistan is. But before we get to that, how are you preparing your organization for the next 3 to 6 months?
Well, the Chughtai Lab at its heart is a diagnostic lab, and so we have always been, that's our niche, and that's also something that we are very good at. We are very good at doing tests and doing them quickly and consistently, and delivering those results conveniently. And even today, we are already living in a post-COVID world as far as Chughtai Lab is concerned. COVID is done and sorted as far as the technical side of COVID is concerned, as far as the testing and optimization and all of that, and the scaling up. So we are already talking about what are we going to do for typhoid, and what is our next move for HIV, and what is our next diagnostic test that we can bring in for oncology testing. So we're already working on things that are going to see the light of day in 6 months or in a year. But we're already hiring people for that. And that's something that we've done all along. We were able to do testing for COVID, not because we want not just because we wanted to, but because we had a team in place. We had a professor in place, we had a full department in place. And so we are continuing to do the drumbeat goes on, and we continue to develop new things and to bring to market in Pakistan new tests, which right now have to be shipped overseas to the US or the UK, and they should be available here. They can be done here for much less, much faster. So we are working on oncology, we are working on genetics, we are working on typhoid, like I told you. So you kind of have to double down on what you're really good at, and that's what we are doing.
Okay, Omar, can you give us, so there are two more sections, Omar, that I really want to touch before we come to the Q&A part of our talk today. Can you give us a brief update of where the COVID-19 situation is in Pakistan and globally? You've mentioned a bit about Madura's vaccine development part. Where is Pakistan in all of this? Do we have capabilities of doing vaccine development work in Pakistan? Number one. Number two, do you believe that the number of cases are going down? Is this what they call the first wave, or will there be a second wave? A lot of people in our audience would want to know firsthand from you what you think of that. So if you could just really briefly tell us about, everybody talking about the number of positive tests coming down, the percentage is coming down, so this is a good thing. What's your take, Omar? Where are we on the COVID situation? Is there a difference somehow? One of the questions that did come up early on was, is there a difference because the number of tests have gone down, or is it just because that the percentage is coming down?
Well, we're definitely past the first wave, and we're actually on the downward slope of the first wave, going down fairly quickly, which is a very good news. Now, if that first wave is going to be the last wave, that depends entirely on us, and that depends on how we act and behave as a society, as communities, and we make sure that we don't let the virus spread quickly. Like it has happened in the US. I mean, the US is definitely in the middle of a second wave now, and a much bigger wave than the first one. And it's because it's been politicized. I was telling somebody earlier today that, COVID got politicized everywhere in the world. It's been politicized here in Pakistan too, but say what you will, all of the provincial governments, in their own ways, have been able to accomplish an arrest of the spread of COVID. You cannot argue with that. It took some time. It took some doing. It took shutdowns and lockdowns and smart lockdowns, and both in Sindh and in Punjab and in KP. Unfortunately, the data out of Quetta is very little, so I can't say for sure what's happening in Balochistan. But overall, in this country, we have been able to manage this crisis much better than many countries, and so we have to give credit where it's due, and it's due at all provincial levels and the federal level. As far as the total number of tests are down, and percentage of tests is falling, percentage of positives is falling. It's similar to what it was in April when we were on the way up. So hopefully this trend will continue. A big event that could spark a new wave is Eid, which is coming up in a few days, because that's what triggered the first big wave in Pakistan, the Eid al-Fitr. So if we are able to navigate Eid, that'll be a big success. And then somebody highlighted earlier to me that the school openings is going to be another big challenge. So we have to take it one step at a time. We're definitely headed in the right direction. Isme koi shak nahi hai. Hopefully we stay on this path of containing the spread.
Omar, I've had the honor of speaking to you during this COVID-19 days. You're somebody who's very calm, who's very well positioned, who understands this and it does not panic under like most of us do. Where do you think, Omar, is the research and development in Pakistan? Do you think there are different strains, what people say, of the vaccine, of the virus itself? Do you think Pakistan will have the vaccine when it comes in? I'm sure you're reading up, you're in touch with a lot of global pathologists as well. Uh, what's your outlook on how this vaccine will play out? Because it affects our daily lives, it affects our businesses, it affects our entire lifestyle.
So I think two kinds of events will trigger the resumption of normalcy. One is a treatment that works for sure. So all of the treatments that we have for now are experimental and they have incremental benefit as opposed to no treatment. But there's nothing out there yet that works for 100% of the patients or even 95% of the patients 95% of the time, like we have for a bacterial infection, even typhoid, which, except for now we have some multi-drug resistant typhoid. But so if we can get even a very good, reliable treatment, that can be a big trigger for resuming normalcy. As far as vaccine is concerned, vaccine development is happening everywhere in the world. There's some very encouraging news, like I said, over the last 48 hours. As far as a vaccine for COVID is concerned, I think Pakistan will be a customer, not a developer. But that doesn't mean that we don't have the potential to develop vaccines for other diseases in the future. I think we will, we can, and we must. We used to manufacture, clothes for everybody in the world, but we never manufactured PPE until we absolutely needed to. And then when we set about doing it, we could. And so why can't we make vaccines? Why can't we make our own medicines? We can and we must. Otherwise, the next crisis again will find us short-handed, and we can't afford that. We're a big country.
So true, Umar. Umar, there are a couple of questions that have come in, and I want to move towards the entrepreneurial part once again. But this one question that's been popping up on our screens is the demand for the COVID test is down. Would you believe that, let me just bring that question up on the screen. Would you recommend random testing now with the spare capacity that you have in the system?
Random is a word that I don't really like. Random means there's no plan behind it. I think so. Disease surveillance is important, but disease surveillance and perhaps even more important, contact tracing is important. So if we have excess capacity, we should use it and deploy it to even more carefully trace the people who have been in contact with the people who have been infected recently, who are known. So contact tracing is what needs to be done. We have been doing it in this country, and we've done it fairly successfully in this country. And because I know for a fact just how tedious it is to collect all of the data for every patient who's coming in for a COVID test, their name, their ID card number, their address, their phone number, which has to be sent to the central database, because if you don't, you get nasty emails from the authorities. So they are quite vigilant about it, as much as there was a backlash early on for exactly this. I think overall we've been pretty good at contact tracing and managing them, managing infections. So uske alawa, I don't think random testing as such will yield any more information than what contact tracing is already doing.
And Omar, what would you say to people who have? There's another question from one of the viewers. What would you tell to the people who just refuse to get testing done because they're just scared of the consequences, or just because they don't want to get tested? This whole tracing system is dependent on people getting tested. So the numbers of people getting tested every day is going down. What do you say to them?
I think what happens is early on, the first few cases that were diagnosed, actually about 4 months and a couple of days ago, that we diagnosed the first case in Lahore, and then a couple of days later the first few cases in Lahore. And early on there were some instances where people felt that they had been harassed or they had been compelled to leave their homes. So we did a poor job as a society in educating the public about what it takes to be a good citizen in such a situation, and what everybody who's infected can do to minimize risk for themselves and others. And I think we did a poor job of implementing home isolation. I think if that policy had been in place much earlier, I think a lot more people would have had more faith in the system, because nobody wants to have police show up at their door There was a huge stigma around this diagnosis also, where people, neighbors stop talking to you, not just you, your whole family. Uh, a social boycott can ensue, and so those problems are real. So I don't blame anybody for not wanting to get tested. But when you do get tested, you get more information, because all fevers are not COVID, and so there is definitely value in getting tested, but nobody can compel anyone to get tested.
So, Umar, I mean, then in that case, the numbers have started to go down now. Do you think you talked a bit about Punjab, Sindh, KP? Um, the numbers are going down definitely. We see that trend. What are some of the things that you think the government did right, or we as a nation did right, and some of the things that we severely did wrong? There's got to be a few learnings where you have collected data. There's been enough information that those who've been infected once can get a second infection as well. But so from your learnings, what were some of the things that we did as a nation, which kind of are bringing the numbers down, or the government for that matter?
Okay, so first of all, that information on instances of a second infection, that's still up for discussion and scientific discussion and debate as to if that is actually a true second infection or if it's just persistent residual viral RNA. So let's put that aside for a second. As far as what we did right and what we did wrong, uh, let's just look at it through the prism of what it takes to contain the spread of the virus. So virus does not walk from one person to the next, it spreads through our respiratory droplets. So what we did well was when we forced people to stop interacting or reduce interacting with other people, whether that was whatever you call it, whether you call it lockdown or smart lockdown, uh, target hot zones or hotspots or whatever they've been calling them recently. So whether that was done here, whether that was done in Karachi or in Islamabad, but that definitely worked to contain the spread of the virus. There's no doubt about that. What we did very poorly was our strategy as far as lifting those restrictions at absolutely the worst possible time. We relaxed those restrictions about 10 days before Eid, which meant that people had a lot of pent up frustration, a lot of pent up demand to rush out of the house, to go shopping, to go meet people, leading up to an event which historically, culturally is a socializing event. So if we had just waited another 10 days and relaxed its restrictions on Eid, not 10 days before Eid, I think we could have perhaps done even better, and a lot of infections could have been prevented, because the first wave that we talk about, it really peaked about 2 weeks after the after Eid, and it started about 5 days after the restrictions had been lifted and kept rising through Eid till about 2 weeks after Eid. So a lot of those people are the people who got infected in the days leading up to Eid and over Eid. So those decisions are made elsewhere, but I think, and also hindsight is of course always 2020, but this is something that would definitely have prevented many infections.
Okay. Omar, we're right around the corner from the next upcoming Eid. What would be some of the things we as a nation or people should take care of so that it doesn't happen again? Your thoughts on that, some of the best practices that you can share with us.
If it were up to me, I would do a 5-day lockdown in the days leading up to Eid and for 2 days after Eid, and just say everybody except healthcare providers and police and essential workers, please stay home and stay safe.
So that means no barbecue this time?
We can do without one for 1 year.
Okay.
You'll be surprised what you can do without. so but it's not up to me. So what I would suggest is that you absolutely have to curtail socializing over Eid. And the other big factor is a lot of people have staff working in their homes, and a lot of people have domestic help, and many of our people who work in our homes and people who work in our companies, they go off to smaller cities or their villages for the holidays. And so agar infection yahan hai, so they take it with them, and then when they come back, they bring the infection that was over there. So that can be a huge trigger for spreading of infection. So if that can be curtailed somehow, I think that would be very good.
But at some point in time, there has to be an opening up of the economy. And as an entrepreneur as well, I mean, you have to address this concern that a lot of people have. What do you think would be the new normal? And in your opinion, if schools have to be opened up, I mean, I understand that's not our decision, but in your opinion, what are some of the new normals that you feel will eventually adopt if we are to open up? I mean, what are some of the safety standards we need to adopt at schools, at office places, at restaurants, at the cinemas, at malls? What's the new normal looking like, Omar?
I think for now, the most I was actually surprised. I actually myself resisted wearing a mask inside my office for a long time, but I mean, it now it's a part of our lives, and I think for some time at least, this is going to be a part of our lives, and it's 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 uh, it's frustrating sometimes. It's annoying many times, but you get used to it. But how do you get children to wear masks? And can you even expect them to continue to wear masks for extended periods of time? So schools are definitely a challenge. I and I don't know how we do that immediately. Perhaps in a few weeks, once we have passed this Eid and we continue to see a decline, then we could actually start selectively opening schools. But the problem remains that we are a big country in a big piece of land, but comparatively speaking, we're more congested than many other countries. So the virus can actually spread very quickly in schools. So that's something to keep in mind. Kids may not get
So,
seriously infected, but they may infect their grandparents at home.
so this belief that the rumor that goes around that Pakistan has a weaker strain somehow, you believe that's, I mean, I just want to bring that up
Pakistan,
so that you can,
Pakistan has a younger population,
thank you. Okay.
and so if you have a younger population, that means you by definition have a more resilient population to this virus. This virus typically severely infects people who are in their 60s and 70s. It does, and it has impacted some people younger. But as a percentage, if you look at it, the mortality rate is much higher in people who are over 60 and 70 years of age. Uh, and our population is very different from that of Italy and Spain and New York and Florida, and so that's what has helped us. But
Okay.
that doesn't.
Thank you.
But we do have elderly people, and so we should not be putting them at risk.
Omar, you very nicely brought me to the last part of the conversation, which is Pakistan has a lot of young population. Omar, as an entrepreneur, what would you tell them to be doing during these days? What would you tell them is the direction that they should take? Is healthcare an industry that can be disrupted? Are people in technology looking at healthcare to be somehow fixed in our country? The government seriously has not done a good job in the last 70 odd years. Do you believe entrepreneurs have an opportunity right now? Do you look at this as a challenge or as an opportunity, Omar?
There's always opportunities, and whether it's healthcare or any other sector, there's so much to do. My father says all the time that Pakistan is a true land of opportunities because nothing has been done yet. Uh, you know, whether it's an appointment system or it's a telepresence or telemedicine. There's so much to do. There is no reliable EMR system that everybody can use and agree on. There's just so much to do in this industry, whether that's in the physical space or in the virtual space or the e-services space or in the payment space or uh, all the opportunities are out there, and these are all opportunities. All challenges are opportunities also.
So, Omar, if I may, and on a live channel right now, I'd use this opportunity to somehow hook you in. Would you give us permission to throw or send a lot of young entrepreneurs in the healthcare industry towards your way? We all know you're pretty diligent on your Twitter as well. So would that be okay, Omar?
Send not just healthcare but all industries.
All right. All right. Lovely. Omar, I want to, my last question on today's talk is how do you keep your day productive? Before the call, we were discussing something about where you are right now. And for our audience who may or may not have observed, I'm sitting on a desk and you're standing on one, and you're on a standing desk. But can you share some light why this is something that you do?
So I do have a sitting desk also, and there's a conference table also in my office. But a lot of my time is spent at this standing desk because I think most of my meetings are less than 5 minutes, and you don't have to offer tea if you're just standing. So things go much faster. खड़े खड़े बात होती है तो बहुत कुछ होता है. And actually, we around this table, even in these times of COVID, we've had some really impactful and really long meetings also, but nobody noticed that we were all standing because we were just really busy. So, but it's a good way to stay focused and stay energized during the day. I do a lot of my work standing up. It's actually it's been a good hack.
Okay, thank you, Omar. I mean, we've realized we might not get tea when we come to your office, and to all of the people we're going to send your way, be ready for a standing desk. You're not getting off. You're not getting a chair to sit down and relax. So on that note, Omar, and well, thank you so much for your time today. We did manage to get time from you today. Omar, it's been a pleasure. It's an honor knowing that you're out there. Your team is out there. We know that the entire team of Chughtai Labs, when they come to our homes to do the home testing, the protocols that they follow, the kind of motivation that they have, the follow-ups that they do. Omar, it's just a validation of what your father started and a legacy that you're developing. And hopefully we wish to see more Dr. Chughtais in the lineup taking this forward. Pakistan is certainly a country where healthcare is something that is on the shoulders of entrepreneurs like yourself, Omar. Omar, thank you for being with us today. It was lovely having you here.
Very kind. Thank you so much.
It's a pleasure. Thank you, Omar. Have a good one.